Get the latest Impact podcast right into your inbox each week. Subscribe by entering your email address at impactpodcast.com to make sure you never miss an interview. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. This episode of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Closed Loop Partners. Closed Loop Partners is a leading circular economy investor in the United States with an extensive network of Fortune 500 corporate investors, family offices, institutional investors, industry experts, and impact partners. Closed Loop's platform spans the arc of capital from venture capital to private equity, bridging gaps and fostering synergies to scale the circular economy. To find Closed Loop Partners, please go to www.closedlooppartners.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. This is a real special edition because we have joining us back again, the Korean vegan herself, Joanne Molinaro. Welcome back to the Impact Podcast, Joanne.
Oh, thank you for having me, John. I'm so excited to be back.
Oh my gosh. Your last episode was one of my most memorable ever, not only from my own thinking and doing, but so many of our listeners and viewers reached out after that and they just enjoy your book so much. And they were clamoring for you to come back. So thank you for coming back and sharing some time with us again.
I aim to please.
Joanne, a lot's happened in between our two interviews. But before we get going into what's transpired and, of course, your new book, and we're going to also talk about your new beauty line as well, let's talk a little bit about your backstory a little bit. But there's a lot of folks that haven't had the opportunity to listen to the first episode and stuff. So talk a little bit about where you grew up and how you even got on this fascinating journey that you're on.
Oh, that's such a long story, but I will keep it as short and succinct as I can. Yeah. I grew up in Chicago, Illinois. It's where I was born. My parents are both Korean immigrants. They were born in what is now known as North Korea, and they were refugees in South Korea before they immigrated to the United States in the mid to early 70s. And they, set up a life in Chicago. I had a very idyllic childhood. I mean, riding bicycles, playing tag, hide and seek with the neighborhood kids. It was a really diverse little town in Skokie, Illinois. And, lived in a tiny little ranch house with a big oak tree in the front yard. My grandma's lived with me and raised me. We had Korean food, growing in the backyard and cooking in the kitchen. And then, I grew up as an immigrant kid, which meant that I spoke Korean first and learned English second, which was, challenging, but I think helped to build the kind of person that I am. Now, I grew up with all of the stereotypes that you hear about with Asian families, which, they very much valued scholarship. And that was a big thing for me. And because both my parents are refugees, they also wanted me to have a very financially secure life, which meant you can be a doctor, lawyer, or get an MBA. That was basically it. And I chose one of those and somehow ended up doing what I do now, which is a little bit of lawyering, mostly cookbooking, though.
I love your parents because literally they're, I think, a little bit older than me. I'm in my early 60s, but I literally did the same thing with our I counted 4 children. We have 2 biological children, then we have our 2 godsons, our brother's sons, and that we also advised when they were young. And we told them, lawyer, doctor. We gave 2 choices. We were a little bit more limited than your parents. Lawyer, doctor. 3 became lawyers. 1 became a doctor. We said, we're done. So I love the way your parents, exactly. But I love the way your parents went about that. So you went on this journey of law, and how did you choose which part of the law you wanted to go into? What was driving you or calling you?
That's such a great question, John. I don't think I've ever been asked that. So I my personality is fairly non-confrontational.
Mm,
Again, many stereotypes. I don't like arguing. I don't like getting into fights. And I thought because of that part of my personality, I should do business like transactional law, which is instead of, fighting, I get to bring people together, create deals, facilitate mergers and acquisitions. That's what I thought. I was wrong. My mom always used to say, "You should be a lawyer. You're so disobedient. You never agree with anything that I say. You always fight." And I just thought she was wrong about that. But my first internship at a law firm while I was still in law school, I decided, okay, I'm going to do a bunch of projects that are transactional, M&As, real estate transactions, those types of things, because that's what I thought. I did one project and I said, yeah, no, this is not for me. This is not for me. And I got to do a trial advocacy program during my internship, which is like a mock trial. And
right.
I realized this is for me. I love this. Yes, there's fighting involved, but there's also like theater and storytelling and writing and acting. And it's like, this is for me.
Right.
And that's how I became a litigator. So I became a commercial litigator. And eventually I specialized in the areas of complex Chapter 11s, antitrust class action, and fraud.
Wow. Wow. And so your career was very, very successful in the law. Let's just say it. What what changed or what happened during your professional career to make you switch to the world of entrepreneurship?
Well, I think, again, there's no overnight story, at least not my story. I know there are
Uh,
overnight stories out there, but mine
yeah.
is never that way. And maybe it's because I'm so risk averse and because I'm a lawyer. But honestly, in 2016, I adopted a plant-based diet and I needed to start figuring out how to cook vegan food because there were no Korean restaurants that offered vegan food at the time. And I was very committed to maintaining my roots to my heritage, and that meant eating Korean food. So I started making veganized adaptations of the food I'd grown up eating. And my then boyfriend, now husband, was like, "Your food is so good. You should start a blog called The Korean Vegan where you share all your food." And I was like, okay, fine. I didn't think anything of it. And that's exactly what I started doing in 2016. And that ultimately gave birth to what is now known as the Korean Vegan, right? Which, is on every single social media platform, has 5 million followers and all sorts of, hundreds of thousands of people coming to our blog every day. And that is my first business, right? I think a lot of times people don't think of influencers or content creators or food bloggers or cookbook writers as entrepreneurs. But believe me, having had most of my career housed inside of an institution and, getting a W-2, you're definitely an entrepreneur when you're doing those things.
Let's talk about two things there. Let's go back. So back switching over from the wonderful creature comforts that a larger organization, something bigger than yourself, offers, and the fraternity that a law firm offers as well, in terms of other bright, wonderful, and smart people, to sort of the semi lonely journey of an entrepreneur. How did that? How did that work? How did that transition feel to you?
It was terrifying. It was
Mm,
absolutely terrifying. I
mm,
think that's such a beautiful question because
mm,
it is incredibly lonely. And that loneliness is not something that really anyone can prepare you for.
mm.
And I'm doing this with my husband, with my partner. He's here with me, he works with me, he's an employee of our company. So notwithstanding that, I'm the face of this company. It's not the Korean vegan plus friends. It's the Korean vegan. And
Korean Vegan Plus Associates.
yeah, it's just me out there. And my brand is my face. It's me, it's my recipes, it's my words, it's my story. So it's especially lonely, but also again, I get the sense from you, John, with your personality that maybe you kind of always had this entrepreneurial spirit. I didn't. I specifically said, I do not want to get an MBA because I don't want to be a business owner. I was terrified of having to make my own decisions and being the safety net for everything. I wanted a safety net beneath me at all times in the form of malpractice insurance and a big law
Right.
firm with, thousands of other attorneys who would back me up. So when I went on it, this journey to essentially leave my firm and really focus on the Korean vegan as my business, it was scary. It was lonely. It was exciting and exhilarating. It pushed me. And every single day now, especially now that I started Korean Vegan Beauty, it's been a learning process that I very much appreciate and that I'm very grateful for.
Do you ever miss the comforts of working for a law firm?
I was thinking about that today because, again, with launching Korean Vegan Beauty, it's
Yeah.
been like exponential stress when it comes to this. And also, the success of this forthcoming cookbook is really important to, TKV. And so I was thinking about that. I'm like, you're really stressed out these days. Like, you're super stressed. And the anxiety is really ratcheting up, Joanne. Are you sure you wouldn't just go back to law firm life? And I said, not in a bajillion years. I still am so lucky to get to do what I do.
That's so awesome. That's so wonderful. But you're right. Well, once you've had the success like you've had, 5 million followers, a New York, basically New York Times called your cookbook, the last cookbook that we talked about on the last episode, one of the best cookbooks of 2021. So did the New Yorker. I mean, with all the adulation you had and the success and 5 million people listening to your voice, everything you do now is magnified. And so, wanting to continue to succeed and deliver to your audience and followers becomes a thing. And that becomes stress but also part of the journey.
I think you're totally right. I mean, you probably are familiar with this concept, but I've learned, okay, selling a product is great, but what you need to focus on is the return customers. That is the
Right.
most important conversion. And so I was thinking about that this morning with the second
Right.
book. I was like, how many people can I draw back into the Korean vegan universe? What you enjoyed the first time, now you're going to get, 10 times more of that in this second book, more intense. And with the benefit of everything I've learned over the past 4 years.
But that's true. All true. But you've successfully done that with your blog, and you keep us all connected through with your blog, and you're so great at that. So to me, I think your continued track record of success in creating hits that people are going to enjoy and use and keep coming back for, I think is going to continue.
Oh,
I think it's going to
that's
continue.
really good hearing from you in particular.
I really think that's. Talk a little bit about the switch over in 16 to become a vegan. Some people do it for political reasons. Some people do it for ideology. Some do it for just strictly health. What was the genesis of your switch over and your eating habits?
Well, that is not a black and white answer, but I would say generally speaking, it was for health.
Hmm.
But to be specific, my boyfriend, now husband, he switched over for health. And I
Hmm.
refused to join him at first because I had all these ridiculous preconceived notions about what it meant to be plant-based. And, but he was really good at applying a little bit of pressure here and there to join him over the next, 2 weeks or so of his experiment, I'll call it, with being plant-based. And we'd watch all these movies and, Food Inc., Forks Over Knives. And then we watched Cowspiracy. And I remember that one landed really hard with me because it was my introduction to big ag and its like horrible impact on the planet. I had full blown did not realize any of those things. And then the ethical conversation became much more complicated for me to ignore. Well, so it's not just me, and it's not just the animals that are impacted by what I put on my plate. It's literally every living being on our planet. That is a very difficult thing for me to compartmentalize. And but after we watched Forks Over Knives, there was a lot of information about prostate cancer in East Asian men. And I kind of filed it away as an interesting little stat. And then my father was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And I felt it was such a weird, coincidences. I don't like that word, but that's what it felt like. Like within
Mm,
days of watching that movie, my father was randomly diagnosed with this exact cancer.
mm.
And I just remember seeing the stat in my head. And I was like, well, if there's ever going to be a sign from the universe that I need to cut out meat, this has to be it. And after that, I stopped eating meat. We cut out dairy and eggs a couple weeks later, and we've been vegan ever since.
Off to the races. For our listeners and viewers who've just joined us, we've got back on our show today Joanne Molinaro. She's the Korean vegan. You can find Joanne at www.thekoreanvegan.com. Your blog to me is just, each blog I've read of yours is just a special story unto itself. You're a prolific writer. Were you an amazing writer before you went into the law, or did the law hone already what were just your innate skills and made you even a greater writer? How did that work? Because very few people write as well as you do.
That's very kind of you. I'm very much blushing. um, my mother is a writer. She's a published poet,
I
and
didn't realize that.
she's also a total bookworm. I was
Mm,
introduced to my very first Penguin classic when I was 10 years old, and I've been reading, the great writers of literature, English or not, since I was 10. And the best writers, in my view, are always big time readers. So I've been a reader my whole life. Of course,
mm,
I majored in English when I was in college. I, studied creative writing quite a lot during college and in high school. So I always had a little bit of a writing bug, but that got squashed during law school. And, lawyering certainly helped me understand the importance of succinctness, clarity, transitions, persuasive writing. And that absolutely is reflected in my writing today. But creative writing was less valued and prioritized during the 17 years where I devoted my life to that. I did start writing again as a hobby in 2011, I believe, and 2012. Started writing some poetry, learned a lot about creative writing just by experimenting. And I think what you see in my book, what you see in my newsletters, and even in my, recipe posts is sort of a, amalgamation of all of those things.
Do you know, prior to starting the Korean vegan, that you had this wealth of historical stories, both from your family, but also from your own journey, that you were dying to share with the world? Because you just have so many fascinating stories, and you share them with such openness and vulnerability, unlike most others. I've rarely ever heard or read anybody that writes like you. Was that something that was just bottled up, and when you sit down, you just go? Or, sort of like, when Billy Joel says he writes a song, it comes to him and he just sits down and he writes it? Or are you a tortured writer who sits in front of your computer and it's all day affair?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, I would say. I believe that there is a fascinating memoir in every single human being. I truly, truly believe that. I think so much, like, for example, great writer for the New Yorker. She's a food writer. She wrote 90% of food, good food, is presentation. And I think that that is very true with storytelling. Everyone has fascinating stories. Yes, my parents' stories in particular, which to your question, I was not intimately aware of until after I started the Korean vegan and I really began that investigative process. I bet if you went into your family tree and started digging around, you'd find all sorts of amazing stories that help to build who you and your family are. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about being a human. Now, in terms of actually documenting these stories, I could sit here all day and I can talk to you and tell you a good story. But because my background is in reading, and because my mother, was giving me Dostoevsky when I was 11 years old, I have in my head a very high bar when it comes to the type of prose that I produce. And so you'll often find me spending an hour to write two sentences, just because I don't like to produce anything that's not perfect. So, if it's a recipe post, okay, yeah, that I could do pretty quickly. But if, I'm working on a memoir right now, and if I mean, it takes me forever to write a paragraph.
I think you're gonna, if we're gonna go back to Chicago, we're gonna talk about lawyers, we're gonna talk about great writers. You're gonna one day come up with something that tops Scott Turow's best work. At one point in your life, you've got so much. It's gonna happen, and we're gonna go back to this podcast, and I'm gonna refer to it and say,
Okay.
"I told you. I knew this was. I know you have it within you." But I also want to give you some more credit than that. You're also a brilliant storyteller, verbally speaking. So for one of my favorite stories, and I can remember exactly where I was when I listened. I was listening to you on someone else's podcast, our common friend Rich Roll. So you're on Rich Roll's podcast, and I'm in a hotel gym on the treadmill, and you're telling the Hershey bar story of your parents. And I remember literally on this treadmill crying, listening. And I'm like, oh, this is great. This is such a great look in the middle of in a gym in Las Vegas. I remember the hotel. I remember literally where I was. And I'm like, how does she tell stories so beautifully? She just has a way. And Rich was blown away. I know. And he's a great storyteller. And he's another lawyer, master with words, master of turn of the phrase. And he was in awe of you sharing that story. Can you just give a little brief snippet of that story? Because the Hershey bar story will stay with me forever.
Yeah. So, my mother's favorite thing to say, this is her favorite story, and she would always start the story as, yeah, the time your grandma almost killed me. And of course, that's what are you
Right.
talking about? And she'd be like, yeah, your grandmother almost killed me. And you'd think at first that it's hyperbolic, but you realize, no, this is literally true. And it speaks to a time in human history that is very difficult to look at in the face. And that, of course, is the Korean War. My mother was born in Ongjin, which is a province, in kind of the northern half of the Korean peninsula. And it was the beginning of the Korean War. It was literally the beginning. And so their village is under attack, and they have been told they need to get out of there, otherwise they may die. So my grandpa and my grandma, they took my mother, who was 18 months old at the time, away from the village. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh, well, they're going to get to safety in 24 hours. No, it took about 2 weeks for them to get to the Yellow Sea, where they were told maybe there would be a ship from the United States Army or the United States Navy that would take them to safety. There was a ship there. But unfortunately, by that time, my mother, 18 months old, was starving. She hadn't had water for, several hours. And my grandparents had no idea, where is this ship going to take us? Is there food on this ship? And, everything's in English. It's mass chaos. And my grandpa finally said to my grandmother, I think we need to drown her. That is the only way to avoid watching her suffer to death, because they were certain that she was going to die from starvation. And so they were about to throw her overboard. They got on the ship and they were about to throw her overboard so that she would drown in the sea, when a couple of American GIs were like, well, what are you guys doing? And of course, they had no idea what they were saying. And, hand gestures. My grandmother is sobbing her eyeballs out. My mother is screaming in agony. And eventually they figure out what's going on. And one of the GIs reaches into his pocket and pulls out a Hershey bar and hands it over. And my mother always ends the story with, and that Hershey bar saved my life. Yeah, it's such
But
a great story.
the immigrant story of America like you said, we all have. I'm an immigrant as well. My family's immigrants, and that story just will never leave me. And that's just one of the great. You're amazing at telling these stories. And I'll tell you, Rich was just. I know he was blown away, and I'm crying on the treadmill, and I'm like, oh my gosh! And I just, whenever I think about how great a storyteller you are, it's not only in your blogs, it's really also in your voice. I'll tell you a quick funny one, and then we're going to go on to all the other wonderful things you're up to. I remember listening to one of your podcasts, and this is one where you're just being again open and so vulnerable and sharing just your own journey. And I'm halfway through the podcast, and I'm realizing it took me 60 something years to realize I'm a 40 something Korean woman who has dysmorphia, because literally I've suffered from that my whole life. But it's hard to talk about it openly and even think that that's part of your journey. But then when I'm listening to how you dealt with it, and you're just the ping pong nature of that thought process, I'm like, oh my gosh, Joanne has this so perfectly. How many other people suffer from this that don't talk about it or don't even admit it or any of that stuff? So each one of your writings and stories are just so impactful on every level, whether it's personal or the history that you share that we all also can relate to. I just think your writing, you've got so much more to do on the writing side because you're just such a talent. It's wonderful. But we're going to switch topics now to your new book. Thank you for sharing this wonderful book with me early. I know it's coming out on October 14th for all our listeners and viewers. This book is beyond amazing. Tell me a little bit how you decided to follow up with your first book, and how you decided and what to curate and put in this second wonderful book, Homemade.
Well, I think that there was a part of me that believes in, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I know that the first book did extremely well. And so I wanted to give readers sort of an extension of that first book. If you enjoyed my first book, you're really going to like the second book. That was really the most important premise of book two. But I also wanted to make it distinct, right? I don't want them to literally have a carbon copy of book one. And that was more than just, well, here are some more recipes. I mean, certainly could have done that. But I wanted this book to be more about Joanne. What are the types of things that she's making in her kitchen all the time? What are her favorite foods? Not just traditional Korean recipes that have been veganized, which is really what book one is. It's an introduction to traditional Korean cuisine with a plant-based twist. That's really what book one is meant to be. You're going to find a ton of traditional Korean restaurants, or excuse me, a lot of Korean recipes in book two, but you're also going to find things like, kimchi nachos, or like, kimchi queso, or kimchi mac and cheese. I mean, this is very much a hybrid of the food that I grew up eating, which is sometimes American food, a lot of times Korean food, and sort of a mixture of those things. Also, it's going to be very comfort foody because that's my favorite food.
Right.
So lots of potatoes and lots of pastas and of course breads, but also like lots of soups and, things that I just love to make when it's just me in the kitchen.
Got it. What's when you with your friends and all the entertaining that you do and things of that such, what's your husband's and yours, like what's the greatest hits in your household? If you were to pick out some of your greatest hits that you and your husband love, but also your friends love as well.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. So my husband's Italian, and so like pasta, pasta, pasta. He can never get enough pasta. So we have, and we have a lot of noodle slash pasta dishes in the book. And so, whatever pasta dish is in there, he's gonna love that. I'm trying to think. Like we had a lot of noodles that I kind of put in sort of like a gochujang dressing or like a spicy spicy oil dressing. And, for us, pasta and noodles is interchangeable. I know some people find that,
Right.
problematic, but, again, I'm Korean, he's Italian. So whether it's noodles or pasta, it's the same to us. We just love noodles, right? And then in terms of, big hits, I throw a lot of dinner parties. The tteokbokki is always a big hit. Tteokbokki is one of the most popular Korean street foods. As you know, John, you've probably had some off the streets of Korea.
Yep. Yep.
And it is one of the most popular street foods. So we have a very simple tteokgochi recipe in the cookbook, which is the kind that comes in skewers because those are really fun and, fun to eat. We have both a sweet kind and we have a spicy kind. So that's a big one. One of the surprising hits from the book was choco pie. Again, you're probably familiar with choco pie, but for those who are not, it's like a, marshmallow sandwich cake covered in chocolate. And I make a strawberry
Oh,
version. And I made it for a birthday party. And I'm not even joking. The guy I made it for, he's a CFO at a large company. And he texted me 2 days later. He's like, "Hey, Joanne, I really think you need to start selling these." He's like, "Really? No, seriously. Can I make an introduction to a grocery store buyer?" So yeah, there are a lot of things like that in the book.
first of all, not only is the book beautifully written, and also what I love, you always do, both in your first book and your second book, you always honor your family, and the book, and your success itself is to me, there's such honor that you always give and share with regards to your identity, your history, and your openness to share about your whole family history, but also you put it in beautiful photos and written form in the book. And the photos, the food photos, I was telling you off there, and I have to share with our listeners. Your husband is your business partner, and he's not only a concert pianist who's unbelievably accomplished, but your websites and everything are all gorgeous. And I know your husband does so much of that. But I before we went on the air, I said yesterday I was going through your book and the photos were just so gorgeous. And I grew up as a young man in the advertising industry in New York City, growing up with some of the greatest photographers in the world. And I got to be exposed to. And these photos are of that quality. And I'm like, oh, I want to give a shout out to Anthony. And then I'm reading the credits in the book that you took the photos in this book. I'm like, oh, wait a second. Like in basketball, they say, well, is someone good on the offense or defense, or they play both sides of the ball? How do you get to play both sides of the ball in everything that you do? Like, it's just not fair that you're loaded with so much creative talent. I mean, these photos, on every level are just, they're just amazing. It makes you want to cook or eat everything that's in this book. It's just incredible.
Thank you.
How long did it take you to put this together? How many years have you been working on this? And talk a little bit about the written side, the photo side, and then the curation side of what to put in and what to leave out.
Yeah, so I started working on this book almost immediately after 2021 and the launch of the first book. And that obviously begins with just a list of kind of dream recipes. Like, okay, not sure I can make these, but here's a list of about, 120 recipes that I'd like to see in cookbook two. And eventually, that turns into, okay, let's see if I can start developing these recipes. Now, because I am the photographer as well as the recipe developer, I have the option of making it extremely efficient, which means test the recipe, then photograph the recipe. A lot of times that works just fine. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, no, this recipe didn't turn out. So we're going to have to scrap all the photographs that I took and those will go into the trash. And it's a wasted effort, essentially. Luckily for me, that happened very rarely, but that did happen. I would say that the big work, which is developing the recipes, writing the recipes, and photographing the recipes, and then editing the photographs. That was about a year and a half of my time, just doing that very intense work. And then probably another year of just editing the writing, going back and forth with the copywriters, making sure that we perfected the recipes. We also worked with about 80 different recipe testers to make sure that the recipes are rock solid.
That's amazing. It's just so beautiful. And this is just going to be another smash hit October 14th at online, Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble, and all great bookstores in your area. You got to buy this book. This is just another winner by you, Joanne. Um, let's switch topics a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your new venture. You're, because this wasn't enough, and your 5 million followers, on TikTok and on Instagram and everywhere else that you can be in social isn't enough. Tell me about the aha moment that Anthony, we have to go and spread our wings a little bit more than what we're doing. Talk a little bit about when that happened, how that happened, and what's the new venture that you and Anthony are launching. I've launched actually.
I'll start backwards. So we
Okay.
at Korean Vegan Beauty. This is the box for the cream. And
Beautiful.
yeah, so we just launched that last week. That was our official launch. And the brainchild for this really started almost as soon as I started cooking Korean food in 2016. And the two things that I knew I would miss when I went vegan, well, I would say the first thing I knew is I would miss Korean food. When I became, acclimated to being vegan, not just for health or for the planet, but, ethically, then I was like, well, what are the products that I'm using in my home that implicate animal suffering? And I realized makeup and beauty products is a huge source of that. And I realized that K-beauty is not vegan friendly. And of course, I'd only ever used K-beauty at that point because I grew up with that. And so I was
Right.
like, well, we got to do something about that. We got to come up with a vegan, cruelty-free K-beauty line. But that's not going to be me because I'm very busy being a lawyer and I also have the Korean vegan food blog. So I hoped that at some point somebody would do it. And, we've definitely seen companies rise to the occasion, especially in the past couple of years. But there was, again, nobody that was vegan who founded a vegan company that offered K beauty. So about 3.5 years ago, I was introduced to, manufacturers who already had a successful K beauty business, but they really wanted to partner with somebody who was vegan and who could launch a vegan K beauty line. And I was like, well, this is something that I've always wanted. And, luckily my brand, Korean Vegan, really aligns with, that objective.
That's right.
And, after 3.5 years of, you know how it is starting a business, especially if you're a lawyer, you're going to make sure it goes exactly the way it needs
Every
to.
three, every T is going to cross.
Exactly. And so, after a lot of back and forth, especially with the formulas, because we wanted to make sure that the products that we launched with were absolutely defendable. And there's no such thing as bulletproof, but as bulletproof as we could make them, because I wanted to really believe in them. And because of that, it did take a little bit of time, but that's exactly how Korean Vegan Beauty sort of launched. It's very similar to Korean vegan food. It was a need. I saw a need. I didn't see a supply that made sense. That was, that had the story. And so I was like, well, I have the story. I need to figure out a partnership that will provide that supply. And that's how we did it.
I'm on your site now, the Korean Vegan Beauty, KoreanVeganBeauty.com. We'll put it in the show notes, KoreanVeganBeauty.com. It's a gorgeous website. How did you choose to launch the first two products that you did, the collagen smoothing shampoo and the collagen cream? How did you, there's a million, beauty products anyone could put out. Why those two to start with?
Well, we have this incredible technology, the vegan collagen, which is proprietary to Korean Vegan Beauty. And we wanted to make sure that we really set a foundation for our customers in understanding, okay, these are the building blocks for a healthy, clean, and not overly complicated
Mm,
beauty
mm,
ritual. And that's
mm.
really what we wanted to do. And to me, that starts with an all-in-one skin cream. I think a lot of people think that K-beauty in particular, it's you got to put like 20 things on your face. There's like a, choreography to it. And that's just yes and no. My mother She looks beautiful for being 76 years old, and she certainly doesn't have a 10-step routine, never adopted one of those, really just use a couple of things on her face. And so we thought, let's start with a, hero product, which is an all-in-one skin cream that features, vegan collagen that's proprietary to us, and bakuchiol, which is, you probably already know this is the big hot new ingredient in K-beauty that everybody's talking about. And then with the shampoo, I mean, and you can maybe see I have the longest hair ever, and it grows very fast, and I have a lot of it. And I really wanted to launch a product that I need and that I want. And that was a shampoo that's obviously vegan, cruelty free, but also contains, again, that proprietary vegan collagen that's going to help to strengthen my scalp, strengthen my hair, keep it looking beautiful and shiny, especially now that I'm 46. I'm at that point where my hair is starting to get a little dry and brittle, and the shampoo is amazing. My mother was, she was with me a couple of weeks ago and we were getting ready for an event. And she's like, I don't know. She's like, what are you doing to your hair? She's like, your hair is the shiniest I have ever seen it in my life. And this is totally unprompted. We weren't
Right.
talking about the shampoo. And I was like, it's Korean vegan shampoo, Emma. You got to use it. Telling to my mom.
So now you have the website. Is the website going to be the place you could exclusively buy it, or is it going to go also into stores? What's your vision on how to get it out to the most people?
Well, that's, obviously reach is a big thing. And, retail is certainly in the 5-year plan. But as you
Yeah.
know, um, I'm I'm less about explosive growth at the beginning and more about building a brand that's solid and sustainable. And so for us right now, the main place to buy it is definitely going to be KoreanVeganBeauty.com. We also have a TikTok shop. You can buy it on Instagram and all of those tiny little shops that attend our social media platforms. But 90% of our sales are direct to customer on KoreanVeganBeauty.com. When we're in when we have the ability to scale and provide the kind of inventory as seamlessly as is necessary in order to get into retail, that's certainly something that is going to be part of our big plan. But right now, I just want to sell the inventory we have,
Right.
in-house and make sure that people understand what our brand is all about.
Uh, the collagen cream you put on before bed, or you put it on in the morning? When do you use the collagen cream?
Well, John, for you, I would recommend.
Yeah, I want to know for me because I'm going to use it.
Exactly. You should use it because it's amazing and it'll keep your skin tight and youthful looking without too much heaviness. I always do this right after, you're probably an active person. I'm an active person. I work out every single morning. I go and I run, I get my workout in, I take a shower, I wash my face, and then bam, I put that cream on before I put on my SPF and whatever I'm going to do for the rest of the day. For ladies or for anyone who uses makeup products, I like to put a layer of the all-in-one skin cream on first because I want that vegan collagen
Right.
as close to my skin as possible.
Right.
And then I layer on with SPF and foundation or whatever I'm using for my makeup. The second time I use the all-in-one is, of course, at night when I'm taking off all my makeup and I washed my face. I put it on again. You'll be amazed at how taut your skin feels, very hydrated in the morning. It's just a great feeling.
No kidding. And then I assume as this succeeds, like you said, start small and grow, there'll be an extension on this product line.
Yeah, so we're already talking about what we're going to add to our product lines. We have a small, tiny little team, but we all have very strong opinions about what the next product's going to be. If you have any opinions, I'd love to hear that. But yes, we're going to be adding at least two more products to the line very soon.
So I'm going to tell you a quick story about my opinion on this kind of stuff. I believe in all this stuff. You don't. Everybody needs a little help somewhere, and this is all important, very important stuff. So the hotel I stay in, because I have partners in Korea and I go there quite often, was being renovated, and so I had to switch to their sister hotel now, which is part of the same, complex in the Gangnam district. And this hotel at night puts a mask by your bed so you get to use a mask. So I've started using a mask now on the regular. So I'm excited for you to come out with the Korean vegan mask because I'm all in on that. I'm all in.
You know what? I'm taking this back to my team. I've got a team
Totally.
on Friday. And I'm going to say, you know what? We have at least one other team member who's very pro mask, very
Yes.
pro mask, like a nighttime mask, a vegan collagen mask. Really, that would be so amazing. Super
Good.
hydrating. And yeah, it would be great.
And people love it. I mean, I love using it. And it's such a wonderful ritual to sort of remind yourself that it's time to wind down and you're going to hit the hay. But before you do that, one last nice thing to do for your body. And my face is totally different because of it. It's really improved. So I'm excited for you to come. But I'm going to use your products. I'm going to get the cream ASAP. I'm going to start using that and I'm going to give you my review. So
Okay. I love it.
I'm very excited about that. Talk a little bit about the high wire act, the balancing act of now, of course, still being a lawyer. And do you practice any a little bit of law still?
No. So this is a very funny story.
Okay.
Almost let my law license lapse because I was
Oh,
like, I'm not practicing anymore. Like, why do I keep having it around? And then so randomly, KCAL News, they reached out to me because they'd seen my TikToks where I'm explaining lawyery things. And they're like, hey, would you like to come on to the news and talk about the Menendez brothers? And I was like, okay. And
what?
I was like, sure. And I was like, well, I have to be a lawyer to do that, I think. So I, renewed my license. And ever since then, I go on pretty regularly now with KCAL News,
Oh, that's
talk
great.
about like random law stuff. So, the last big one I did was the P. Diddy trial. And, I came on almost weekly to talk about the trial, its implications, what to expect, and all of those things. And it's been so fun. So that's the kind of lawyering I do, if you could even call it lawyering.
Oh, no, you're basically like a legal analyst,
Yes,
like a
exactly.
retired NFL player that now, like, Brady gets in the booth,
That
and
is
now
such a
you're in the booth. You're
that's
in the
such a
booth.
great analogy. That's
That's you.
exactly what I've been doing. Yes.
Brady in the booth.
I'm
Joanne in the booth. That's it. Come
hopefully I'm
on.
better than Brady.
Yeah, exactly. Come on. Awesome. That's just so cool. Um, let's talk a little bit about the juggle now. So 5 million followers, the blog, the, the launch of a new book, and this book is thick, and it took a lot to make this beautiful book homemade. The new Korean vegan beauty line. How do you spend your days? Where do you spend? And then public appearances and all those other kind of things. So how do you constantly reprioritize and your time and still have time for a life with your husband, who's your business partner as well?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I think that, let's start at the micro level.
Yep.
As you know, I'm a long distance runner and I have learned from training, for the past decade now that I don't operate well if I don't build in rest. I'm not productive and it usually ends up being a bad situation. So, for example, yesterday, I knew for the next week I'm going to be buried doing everything for the book, for the makeup, for the beauty line, and a number of other obligations that I have. And so I took a half day yesterday where I only worked for the first half, and then the second half I listened to a book or did crossword puzzles because I knew like if I don't do this, I'm going to burn out like on Wednesday, and I just
Right.
can't afford to do that. So that's a very micro level. I think at a macro level for me. I I'm learning this as I go and I'm making mistakes. So I'm letting you know I'm not good at this quite yet. But I have to learn that there are certain things that even though I love doing them, if they're not generating revenue, and even worse, if they're actually taking me away from the things that can generate revenue, then it does require a little reevaluation. And then sometimes I do have to jettison those aspects of my business. I wish that there were more hours in the day and there were more calories in my body to facilitate me doing all the things that I would love to do. But sometimes I have to make tough decisions. The other part of that, John, as I'm sure you know, is sometimes I have to figure out from an investment perspective, well, what's still worth investing in, even if it doesn't immediately generate a return? do I see potential in this? And that's always the really difficult part about prioritizing the verticals in one's business portfolio.
I'll give you a little tip on that issue. That comes as you continue on your entrepreneurial journey, the understanding of long-term payoffs on short-term investments will come with more pattern recognition, because pattern recognition, literally, when you talk to Jordan or Brady or any of the greats in any business, Warren Buffett, it all comes down to pattern recognition. So pattern recognition is something that you just, again, hone and polish as the journey continues in any given expertise that you're trying to work on. And now you're on that entrepreneurial journey and continuing to hone and polish it. And you'll just keep getting better and better at realizing, oh yeah, if I spend a little time here, this is a 3, 4, 5 year payoff, but this is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what happens in what I found happens in the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, well, I think that there are some people who are better at recognizing patterns than others. I think you're really gifted at that. I think I need to still learn. I'm so like, I need all the data before I can derive conclusions, and I have no data. That's really my brain.
Here's a funny comment, though, to your point. Pat Mahomes, literally, arguably, one now, challenging Brady to be one of the GOATs, said last year, after he had won 2 Super Bowls already and 4 AFC championships, last year was the first time he said he felt perfectly comfortable behind the line of scrimmage because he could read any defense in the speed that he needed to before the ball got snapped. Same thing with you. It's just a journey. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And of course, there's going to be hits and misses along the way, but you'll realize which ones hit and okay, I'll do more of that then in the future. And that it just comes with time. Yeah. It just comes with doing. You're so young, and your journey is still so new. It's just going to come with time, because you already have the innate ability. And one thing that Malcolm Gladwell doesn't touch upon, he just talks about 10,000 hours. It's not just the strict 10,000 hours. It's literally putting in the time and then learning from, the learnings that you get from, and then using that as part of your feedback decision-making. It's not just strictly, because anyone then could just do 10,000 hours of something and think they're going to be great at it and a potential GOAT. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, you're totally right. I love hearing that from people like you. It makes me feel like, all right, I could do this.
You absolutely could do it. You could, because you've already proven you could do it, because you've done it in other areas before. Look at, you've mastered the law before. You've mastered social media. You've mastered your blog. Yeah, you've mastered the art of writing and writing a book that to be successful, which, by the way, is a lot harder than it's ever been before. So I have no doubt you're going to be successful in all of this. We're going to do a little lightning round now.
Hey, I'm so excited.
If you could, food is such a big deal, and we're of course promoting your new book, Homemade. You can have a meal with anybody, dead or alive. Who are you gonna have a meal with?
Oh my God, Beethoven.
Very cool. Yes. Very cool. Did you grow up with music in your household?
Of course. I started learning piano when I was 6. I added violin when I was 10. I love classical music. And of course, I married a classical pianist. So yes.
You guys ever play together?
No, because my husband's like the best and I'm not.
I love it. Well, what's something recently, because I know you love to share pieces of art that turn you on, television, movies, and things of that such. What's something that's recently moved you a lot? A piece of creative work, whether it's writing, whether it's movie, television, Netflix, whatever it is. What's something that's moved you most recently in your life?
So I just about a month ago, I finished a book called A Little Life, which has gone viral on social media, and a lot of people have read it. And I took a long time to do it. I'd started it multiple times, but this time I was absolutely like, I have to finish this book, and I finished it. And I'm telling you, John, it's a book about New York City and about a few men who live there and the story of their lives and their friendship. And it was written by a Korean, Japanese, American woman. And it is some of the most lush, beautiful, technically unbelievably crafted writing I've
Mm.
read in a long time, certainly in modern fiction. I grew up, reading classics like all dead authors. This one's very much alive. And I remember I'm writing right now like a memoir, and I told my husband the other day, I'm going to read my favorite chapter from that book until I almost have it memorized, so that when I write the chapters in my book, maybe I can sort of channel some of the artistry and the symmetry and the, poetry that she injected into her storytelling into some of mine. It is powerful and beautiful writing.
Your memoir is going to be on your life.
It's going to be on my mother's life, my grandmother's life, and my life. So it's a story of the three women. And yeah, that one hasn't been announced yet. We just signed the deal. Like, we haven't even technically signed the deal, inked the deal, but we agreed, and we just started writing it very recently. And that will probably not be out for a couple years.
I hate to say I'm right, but Scott Turow, you better watch out. She's coming for you. She is coming for you. That's just going to lead to more and more great things after that. And I'm sure that one's going to be amazing. Travel. Yeah, I know you love Italy and I know you love South Korea, but talk about if you could go anywhere in the world with Anthony that you haven't been before,
I,
where would you go?
I would love to go to Croatia. And it's very random, but my sister-in-law, who's much more well-traveled than I am, has told me it is one of the most beautiful places in the world. And I always like to travel to places where I can bring my camera and take memorable photos. So we went to the Dolomites last year, and it was breathtaking. And I just loved that experience. So I want to do something like that.
That is wonderful. So, talk about what's next. What is next? The book is written and it's published and it's coming out October 14th, homemade. You got to buy the book online or at a bookstore near you. The Korean Vegan Beauty's out. First two products, this cream, which I'm going to be buying today, and the shampoo. What are you dreaming of next? You're writing the memoir. What's next? I mean, with you now, this is going to become um, I'm sure there's a lot goes through your head when you lay down at night.
Well, the memoir is honestly the thing to me. I mean, I think, John, like, in thinking about my career and where I want to be in the next 10, 15 years, the
Yeah.
memoir is really meant to introduce me as more than a recipe developer, cookbook writer, or an YouTuber, an influencer. There's so many connotations to particularly those last two words. And I really want people to see me as a serious writer. And here's the thing, John, I'm going to get emotional. I never thought I was a writer. I never thought I was a creative person at all. I was like, well, I'm good at math and I'm good at 90-degree angles and I'm good at, analyzing things. I'm great with Excel spreadsheets and formulas, but I'm not creative. That's why I married Anthony. I was like, he's creative, not me. And so to be given this opportunity to write the story of my grandmother and my mother, which is really meant to amplify the stories of all invisible women and people who have been oppressed or silenced throughout their lives, is like, I don't know, it's this incredible dream that I never thought I would ever earn. And so this opportunity is everything to me. So to me, when answering the question, what's next, there's no other next. Like,
This
that
is
is the
it.
big
This is
next.
it.
Yeah.
I love it. And by the way, you totally head faked Anthony. You were really a creative with a law degree. And and I think he should actually go out and now get a law degree because you totally you owned the creative space. You knew you had it within you, but you were using as the headline, the law degree. It's the opposite. No one can take these kind of photos who's not a creative. No one could write the kind of blogs that you write without being a master. You're a master storyteller already. If someone wants to know how great a storyteller you are, they don't even. The memoir is going to be amazing. I'm sure. I'm going to read it. I'm sure I'm going to love it. But you just have to follow your blogs. Your blogs are just each one is a little gem unto itself, and it's like a whole jewelry store if you read them all.
Thank you so much. It's
True.
really lovely to hear that. And it's also like, if anyone's listening and you have this misconception about yourself, I think that's the exciting thing about life. You could be in your mid 40s and still really, really surprise yourself.
Well, you said you mentioned earlier, your mom was, of course, a bibliophile unto herself and a poet, but she really was by training, by education, and by practice a nurse.
Mhm. That's exactly right. Yes.
So
She didn't, she's now,
I wonder who's following that. I wonder
yeah,
who's following that trajectory by
it's true.
training a lawyer, but really a creative in her heart and her soul.
Yeah. Yeah. And when given the opportunity, what can happen? That's really the story.
It's really the story. Well, with that, we're going to leave for our listeners and viewers to find Joanne and all of her wonderful ventures. Go to thekoreanvegan.com, thekoreanvegan.com. Of course, she's on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and everywhere on social that you engage with. Also, go to koreanveganbeauty.com. It'll all be in the show notes, but I'm just saying it for those who are listening in the gym or driving your car or walking your dog. You don't have to take any notes. It will be in the show notes. Also, this amazing book, Homemade, October 14th. This is going to be a great Thanksgiving or Christmas gift for anybody this holiday season. Buy the book, Homemade. It will change your life. You don't have to eat 100% vegan or plant-based, but if you start making some of these recipes, you could change your view on what food is to you and the relationship it has, and they're all delicious. Joanne, you're always a joy to have on. You're an amazing human being. I wish you all the best in everything you're doing. I can't wait to read your memoir. How many years is this going to take to write, you think? What do you think?
My deadline's in next March, so I don't have a lot of time.
So what's your routine? You get up in the morning and when do you write?
I wish it was like that. I have to write for so many different things. So usually what I do is I block out a day per week where it's like 8 hours of just writing. And that's why it does feel like torture sometimes. I wish
But up to that 8 hours, do you leave yourself little notes on what you want to put into that 8 hours of writing? Do you leave yourself no.
I just sit down and I write. I write for 8 hours. Whatever comes out of that is what I send to my editor.
In quiet, or do you listen to music, or how do you do it? What's your creative vibe?
Yeah, I've tried to listen to music, but I get distracted. I have found luck at the library. So I'll just go to the public library where it's really quiet and I'll just sit down and write if I don't find quiet here at home. But, I'm new to this. John, I mean, I know I write the blog and I write the newsletter, but this is serious writing, and I'm only just getting started. So I'm still trying to figure out like what process works better for me. But like I said, thus far, the library has been very promising because I require deep quiet in order to really get into this. The other thing that I'm going to experiment with this week, because I have such a busy week, is waking up at 3 a.m. and writing then, which I've heard from other writers is actually potentially a productive time to write.
Because you need quiet. Do you ever wear headphones when you're writing? Just put nothing in them?
No, I don't think it's not that I need like that level of quiet. It's more
Okay.
like I can't have like distractions with
Right.
Lulu barking or my husband playing piano, which is many hours of the day, or, vacuum running and things like that.
Got it. Understood. TheKoreanVegan.com, KoreanVeganBeauty.com, and this book, Homemade, October 14th. Joanne, I can't wait to have you back on the show. I can't wait to just keep enjoying all the success that you've had. You're going to just keep doing what you're doing, and you're going to keep making the world a better place. And I'm so grateful for your time today to share your journey with our listeners. Thanks again for all that you do.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's listening.
This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Engage. Engage is a digital booking platform revolutionizing the talent booking industry. With thousands of athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, Engage is the go-to spot for booking talent, for speeches, custom experiences, live streams, and much more. For more information on Engage or to book talent today, visit letsengage.com. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com.